A man with a fake badge cut through my fence and left my dog for dead. My response ensured he'd never do it again. The knife came first, then the sound my dog made. That's the order my brain locked in forever. Blood pooling on my ground, right under the oldest thing on my property, a rusted, bullet-pocked sign that says, "Keep out." And the guy responsible? He wore a polo shirt with HOA cop stitched over the pocket, like some homeowners association had deputized him to invade my family's legacy. Before I explain how an HOA volunteer ended up bleeding out in my pasture, I need you to do something. Drop a comment below with where you're watching this from. I want to see how far the truth spreads. To understand this, you need the backstory. I'm not a politician or a security guard. I raise cattle. My tools are feed, fence posts, and firearm I'm licensed to carry. When you're 30 minutes from the nearest town, you are your own first responder. My grandfather fenced this land. My father surveyed it. Every acre is documented in county records, long before some suburban committee decided they owned the view. The trouble began when the neighborhoods crawled closer. Cookie-cutter houses, manitured grass, and an HOA board chairwoman, let's call her Denise, who decided my working ranch was an eyesore. She filed complaints, said my pasture was part of a shared scenic corridor, claimed my herd was a nuisance. It was all fiction. I met with her. I showed her the land grants, the livestock permits, the official maps. I was calm, reasonable. She gave me a thin smile and said, "We'll find a solution." Her idea of a solution was theft. A week later, 3 of my steers vanished. The fence line was sliced clean through. Not broken, cut. I called the sheriff. He saw the tire tracks, the deliberate damage. The next day, Denise shows up with a printed memo. She said the cattle were relocated for community safety. Relocated. That's when I drew my line. I told her, face to face, "You have no jurisdiction here. Set foot on my soil and you will be prosecuted for trespass." She just smirked and walked away. 2 days later, their truck returned. This time it was him, the so-called officer. He snipped the wire fence like he owned it and marched toward one of my calves. He already had the blade in his hand. My dog, Rex, got there first. He did his job. He barked. He positioned himself between the threat and the herd. And for that, the man plunged the knife into his side. That's when I started running. My pistol was in my hand before I'd even consciously decided to draw it. My world shrank to the sight of that man standing over my dying friend, the weapon glinting red. He turned to face me, the knife still held ready, an arrogant tilt to his head. The vest, the shirt, he truly believed they were a shield. In that frozen second, on the land my blood and sweat paid for, beside the animal whose breath was fading, I understood this was no longer about cows or property lines. This was about the fundamental right to exist without fear, and he had just forfeited his. I closed the gap fast. "Step away from my dog," I said, my voice low and steady. "Now." He glanced from my firearm to my face, his confidence wavering for a flash. "You're pointing a gun at an official. That's a felony." I took another step. "You are a trespasser who just committed aggravated cruelty. Drop the blade." He shook his head, shuffling back until he hit the broken fence post. "The animal came at me. I had a right to defend myself." He was defending himself from a dog that never left my property, from a loyal animal now bleeding into the dirt at my boots. I looked down, just for a heartbeat. Rex's eyes met mine, his tail giving one weak thump. When I looked back, the knife was still up. "Final warning," I said. He didn't drop it. Instead, he squared his shoulders. "Stand down," he ordered, as if he had any authority to give commands on my land. And then he made his fatal error. He lunged, not to flee, but toward me, the knife arcing sideways. 2 shots rang out. The sound was enormous in the quiet field. The man crumpled, the blade spinning from his grip. He fell hard onto his back and didn't move. Silence rushed in, broken only by the ragged, wet sound of my dog's struggle. I kept my gun trained on the intruder until he'd kicked the knife into the tall grass. Then I dropped to my knees beside Rex, my hands pressing against the wound, my voice cracking as I begged him to hold on. I called 911 first. Shots fired on my property. Armed intruder down, he stabbed my dog, sent deputies and an animal ambulance. Then I called my vet, my composure gone. I'm coming in. He's hurt bad. Be ready. Distant sirens began to wail. As I waited, applying pressure, watching the dust settle, one truth became unavoidable. This was just the beginning. The legal storm that was coming would change everything. The deputies arrived in a convoy. I had already set my pistol on the ground and stepped back, hands open and high. They secured the scene with professional efficiency. One tended to the wounded man, now moaning and handcuffed. Another collected the knife as evidence. A third stayed with me, his questions a blur. The emergency vet unit arrived like angels. They worked on Wretch right there, loading him onto a stretcher with an IV already going. I rode in the back, my hand buried in his fur, making promises I'd prayed I could keep. He survived surgery. The vet said the blade missed a major artery by a centimeter. Back at the ranch, the evidence was undeniable. My security cameras, neighbors' drone footage, even the dash cam on the HOA truck, they all told the stark story. Clear trespass, premeditated violence, a lawful defense. Charges were filed by noon the next day. The HOA cop was hit with aggravated animal cruelty, felony trespass, assault with a deadly weapon, and impersonating a peace officer. Hospitalized for weeks, he later took a plea. 19 years in a state penitentiary, full restitution for my costs, and a permanent ban from any security work. Denise wasn't spared. Her digital trail, texts, emails, forged documents proved conspiracy and theft. She received a 7-year sentence. The HOA board tried to flee responsibility. It failed. I sued for vet bills, property damage, and the profound distress they'd caused. Their insurance denied them. The settlement drained them, and the association dissolved within 6 months. Denise lost her home and her standing. Rex came home with a limp and a scar, but his spirit was unbroken. He still patrols the fence line. That old keep out sign is still there, but now its message carries the weight of a lesson learned the hardest way possible. Fake authority means nothing on the wrong side of a property line. Some boundaries aren't open for debate. Some warnings aren't just words, and some people only learn respect when they're staring down the consequences of their own arrogance. That's the story of how a predatory HOA learned that on private land, the law of the landowner is the one that matters most. If you believe in standing your ground, show some support for the channel. Hit that like button, and make sure you're following Trending Tales Pulse for more real stories of justice served. When they cross the line, you hold it.